But basically, if you say, well, my back hurts, what should I eat? I just can't, I just can't go there. And finally, I always like to remind people that there are essentially 3 E's when we look at any presenter, and I appreciate you coming out tonight, but there's essentially 3 E's that we got to look at. We have to look at A. Does the person have the education to support what they're telling you, what they're teaching you? Are they actually giving you factual information, or are they just kind of making up stuff and passing it along to you? I understand there's a lot of reasons to come hear speakers. I come to hear speakers myself for a lot of different reasons. It's like, why do I read a book? Some books I read for entertainment. Some books I read for information. It's the same thing. I watched a movie on the plane over from England, and it was strictly for entertainment. Okay, and somebody asked me, how was the movie? And I almost tried to analyze it, and I said, you know what, for entertainment, it was fine. For an education, it really wouldn't have been a very good movie. So, depending on the education of the person, take that into account when you consider the information being provided by that person. Number 2, experience. Does the person really have the experience to express to you something that either you don't already know, or what it is they're telling you? Is it something new? I had a strange experience. I was in Atlanta doing a presentation, and it was at a store not all that different than this one, but Atlanta version, and they had a wall of raw food books. It was a great thing. I mean, they had all kinds of books, but one whole wall was dedicated strictly to raw food books. I knew all 20 authors personally. I knew which ones were raw and which ones weren't. I knew which ones were vegan and which ones weren't. It doesn't matter. Anybody can write a book, and it doesn't discredit them whether or not they're vegan. I mean, that isn't the issue, or whether or not they're raw. It's the material in the book, not how the person themselves lives. I'm not judging them in this way, but I knew all these people. I count literally all of them as friends of mine, and if I was in need of a favor, I wouldn't have hesitated to ask any of them to come to bat for me if I needed it. And the odd thing was that I knew all of them well enough to know that not one single person of the 20 authors of the 20 books, not one single person was today following the program that they wrote about in their book. Why? Because they're relatively early on their raw path. They're still developing their knowledge. They're changing. Okay, they're excited, the 3rd E. They're excited to the point of writing a book. I'm excited to the point of lecturing in Florida last night, and lecturing here tonight, and lecturing somewhere else tomorrow night. I love doing this. And I'll share with you that getting in front of people was my biggest fear in life. I had 3 big fears in life, and it turns out I ended up learning a living in all 3 of them. But it was one of my biggest fears in life, was to get up in front of more than one person at a time. To be quite honest, even one sometimes was scary. And not one single person was still following the program. And if you went and read their book, and then did their program, and it didn't work, and you went right to them and you said, you know what, I don't understand it. Now I'm so glad you're here to talk tonight, because I'm following your program and it's just not working for me. And they go, well, what are you following? What are you doing? They go, well, I read that book and it's right there. And they go, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Now I'm doing this. I'm not knocking that either. We're all on a path. I encourage you to put your philosophy so far out in front of yourself that you have to strive, that you have to grow in order to catch up to that philosophy. And hopefully, long before you get there, you'll have pushed the philosophy further out in front some more. But it's another thing entirely to tell people, hey, follow me. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm really excited, and I'm not where I used to be, and come follow me. In fact, I think tonight I'm supposed to talk about how and why to go raw.
That's what you said.
That's what I said. How to go raw. Eat raw food. Why go raw? Because cooked food doesn't work. Is there anything else we can talk about, or do you want me to go in more depth? How many people here are already eating raw food? I mean, I don't have to tell you how. You already figured it out in that case, and I probably don't have to tell you why. But I can tell you a little bit about those things if you like, and we'll venture off into a few other areas. I can tell you for sure that in 30 years of eating raw food, I've learned a few things. Who wouldn't? And honestly, the reason to go raw is because cooked food doesn't work. It doesn't work on almost any angle that you can look at it, under any light. Some of you may know I wrote a book expressing to people what I believed was the healthiest way, the most successful way to go raw. It's called the 80-10-10 diet. I don't believe that it's the world's best diet. The world's best diet is the diet where you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and there are no negative consequences of any kind. That diet, unfortunately, does not exist. But it would be way better than the 80-10-10 diet. Right? I mean, if you could eat anything you wanted in the whole world, anytime, as much as you want, and there were no negative consequences, who would be a raw food vegan? Yeah, you notice not one hand went up? And that's the reality. The reality is that each and every one of you gave cooked food a chance first, and it didn't take you where you wanted to go. Somehow, by some miracle, we didn't make one wrong turn between San Francisco Airport, Berkeley, to pick up some product, and coming up here. I don't know, there was a miracle there. We didn't make one wrong turn. I saw some really interesting roads I would have liked to have gone down, but they would not have taken me here. That was the whole point. And so, I'll begin my how and why to go raw by telling you a story that is true story. My wife Rosie and I dated for 10 years before we got married. We actually knew each other for 12 years. When I first met her, I knew right away there was something special about her. But I didn't know what that was going to be. But I knew she was special. But she lived in England and I lived in Florida, and we both had our own careers, and we didn't get to see each other that often, and we tried to develop a relationship. And the relationship worked pretty well for me. But it didn't work at all for her. Basically, the relationship was, whenever we're together, we're totally focused on each other, and the rest of the time, we're not. That worked pretty well for me. Didn't work for her. So we tried another way of doing it. We tried total commitment to each other. Even though we only see each other on and off, here and there, a few times a year, for a total of somewhere between 6 to 10 weeks out of the year. She could make that work. I couldn't. To be honest with you, I couldn't make it work. Didn't work for me. So eventually, we went to the third way, which was, you know what, we're going to have to give our careers whatever it takes. I'll work less, she'll work less, we'll spend more time together.